Hey, this is Mike with Christian Med. This week I'm going to talk about mastery, what makes somebody qualified to talk about any given subject, and let's get started. It's a very interesting age that we live in currently. We've gone from an analog age to a digital age. With the digital age, anybody can broadcast themselves like I'm doing now, to basically the masses. At least anybody who has internet, and that's a lot of the world at this point. So what makes somebody an expert? What makes somebody, a master of anything? Almost all information is online now. Anything that you want to learn about, you can pretty much learn. There's all kinds of courses, there's all kinds of teaching tools. So what makes anybody an expert or a master? I've read books that basically say that if anybody reads 3 books on any given subject, they could start a YouTube channel and talk about it. Does that make them a master at that? I don't think so. So I've been thinking a lot about how to present myself on this channel. The Christian Med's concept, the vision that I was given by God, was basically to have, 12 points. Those points interact with each other, and those 12 points, just like there were 12 disciples, ends up healing the soul once you get all of them working in rhythm with one another. So there's 4 main categories, right? The 4 main categories are God, relationships, nutrition, and vibration, basically, or, controlling your state of mind and your breathing and all of that. Because we are vibrational beings, every aspect of us is a circulatory system that ends up, allowing us to not only breathe, but also to think. All those things are electrical currents, all those things have frequencies, all those things interact with one another and function better when we're mindful of them. Being a master, it takes about 10,000 hours. Some things say 25,000 hours. But let's just use 10 because it's easier to think about. So if you applied 2 hours a day, right, to something, in 15 years, you would be considered a master at that. So if you practiced piano for 2 hours a day and did that for 15 years, you'd become quite proficient, right? And that's pretty much the way it works with everything, but do you see that change happen from one day to the next? You really don't. And when it comes to your relationship with God, it works a lot in the same manner. When you end up saying, I'm going to set time aside with Him, and you do that on a consistent basis, it really does start becoming cumulative over time and keeps amplifying over time. I spend at least 2 hours thinking about God every day, and have been for well over a decade. And now I'm finally starting to feel like I have a solid relationship with God. Do I fully understand His purpose in life and how He wants me to be on a daily basis? No. But do I have a better understanding today than I did 10 years ago? Yeah, you better believe I do. And that's kind of the point. The point is that you just need to keep working towards things. And sometimes it becomes like a graph where the graph is very small to start and keeps amplifying over time. It's the opposite of the material graph. When you get a material thing, you get a new house, you get a new car, you get a new phone, you get a new whatever, it's really cool when you start, and over time it diminishes. So that's part of the reason why God wants us to concentrate on spiritual things and not physical things. So when we're thinking about spiritual things and giving God whatever we want to call it, a quiet time, just reading the Bible, listening to a sermon, listening to a podcast like this, anything that's mindful of God. And when we start doing that on a consistent basis, week in and week out, it definitely keeps becoming more and more important in our lives. And it's very grounding to us. It very much allows us to feel like we have a partner in life whenever we're down, whenever we're depressed, whenever we're fighting, having a weight problem, or fighting, being in a marriage that's not healthy for us, or whatever situation, grief of a loved one, all kinds of different things can happen. And God is always steadfast, and once you have a relationship and have that as an anchor that you can rely on, it's really a challenge that he wants you to overcome, and there's an aspect of, if we're not challenged, we end up never growing. And he wants us to grow and grow in a relationship with him. If we didn't have any adversity, and that's kind of what ends up happening a lot of times. When we first get saved, we're gung-ho, and then we kind of become reliant on it, and the newness wears off and all that. And that's what I'm trying to get people away from happening in their lives. I'd much rather them start interacting on a daily basis, because when you do that, then when something adversely happens to you, you can overcome it. And the reason why you can overcome it is because you've already got a foundation, an anchor in God, that you know that he loves you just the way you are, and he's looking for you to improve yourself, and you are going to be convicted on some things, but he already loves you, and he already knows what's best for you. And sometimes when you feel like you're wrestling with him, it actually ends up becoming a beautiful thing when you look at it in hindsight. My first marriage, was, I would never wish that situation on anybody, but it helped me. It helped me become who I am. It helped me become more confident, but it's taken a long time. And I still have triggers, things that I see that make me remember back to just horrific memories. And I'm trying to, still, put those in a certain place where they don't affect me negatively like they used to, but I'm still embracing them because they help shape me. So I'd highly recommend the book Mastery. I'd highly recommend it to, buy it for any kid going off to college, or any kid that's, in high school. That book, it's one of those books that can be very inspiring. When it really comes to all this stuff, I'm looking at 12 subjects that across the board, I'm not an expert at any one of those 12. Okay, in other words, if you took just God, I would look at somebody like R.C. Sproul or Wayne Grudem, or somebody like that, and say, currently, their knowledge of the Bible, their knowledge of theology is way surpassed mine. Not that I can't have an intelligent conversation with them. I've taken my level higher than most Christians have, but that does not make me an expert. It makes me have an opinion, and having an opinion is probably enough to have a YouTube channel on something, but being a master of something, you really need to dedicate probably to a smaller segment than what I'm trying to do here on this channel. When it comes to relationships, there's lots of psychologists and people that have been trained in relationships and all this stuff that can give a lot better advice than I can, but when it comes to a relationship with God, I've been working towards mine for more than a decade. I'm working on, year 14, and I've been doing it consistently every day, trying to walk closer to God every day for 14 years. You know, when it comes to nutrition, you know, I've lost weight 5 years in a row. You know, I'm getting back into a shape that I'm happy with. You know, I'm getting into a place where I understand how the hormones in my body work. I understand how calories in to calories out kind of matter and kind of don't. It depends on the way you look at it and there are flaws in the concept of calorie counting, you know, and that's part of the reason why people stay fat is because a lot of it becomes more of a hormonal issue of the way your hormones work in your body, what makes you hungry, what makes you all these things. And I want to go into more of that in detail, and I will over time, you know. So there's that aspect of it, you know. But does that make me a master of nutrition? No, but I know what works for me, and I know enough to know this is these people's point of view, this is these people's point of view, and I will be pointing out who I think are experts in nutrition and who really do have, you know, your best interest at heart. And then when it comes down to, you know, basically frequency and mindset, you know, this is the aspect of, you know, where it becomes very tricky to be a Christian channel, you know, because there's so much New Age stuff wrapped around and New Age mythology wrapped around and, you know, people trying to be one with the universe, you know. I don't care to be one with the universe. I want to be closer to God. You know, there's a big difference there. I don't worship the created. I worship the Creator. And that's part of the whole thing. So when it comes down to all these different pieces and all this stuff, you know, I'm going to direct you towards people that I would consider experts and masters of these things, you know, that have 30 years, 40 years of experience doing those subjects, you know. But when it comes to me and what my benefit is to this whole channel is that I see patterns. I've always seen patterns. I solved puzzles from a very young age. Rubik's Cube, Rubik's Revenge, all the different puzzles. I could solve all the puzzles, figure out where all the pieces fit. This is what I do, is I figure out very complicated puzzles and I make the pieces fit. So when it comes to across the board of all 12 subjects, I probably have a clearer understanding of how they interconnect than anybody else, just because I have the knowledge on these 12 subjects, not because I'm a master or an expert on any one of them. So that's what I wanted to share this week. I hope you're having a wonderful week and enjoying these videos. If you are, please subscribe and click the like button, and have a wonderful week.